All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining the West Oakland Link community meeting, focusing on the project near or at 65%. We last met in spring 2024, and a lot has happened since then. Next slide, please. Some meeting expectations just to maintain a level of respect and collaboration is please communicate with respect and be mindful of how much space you're taking while engaging those who haven't spoken. Respect time agreements and stay on topic in order to achieve our meeting goals. We actively listen, right, with an open mind and respecting multiple points of view. Assume good faith, right, and giving and receiving feedback, criticism, and questions. And we're very aware of who's missing on these calls and are always looking for solutions to make sure that they're here moving forward. So our agenda for tonight is we're going to start with a project overview, followed by project updates. Then we're going to jump to pedestrian and bicycle design and follow with landscaping. So lots of exciting topics. And our presenters for this evening, we have myself, I'm Nicole Marino Choi. I'm the Senior Project Manager at West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, and we are the community lead for the West Oakland Link. We also have Gavin Laurie, who is the Project Manager for MTC and / Bay Area Toll Authority. They are the folks that collect your money every time you cross into San Francisco or use any of the wonderful bridges that we enjoy. We have Aaron Vaca, who is with TY Lin City Solutions, Matt Malone with Perkins and Will Architecture, focusing on urban design, and Sarah Keel, who is our landscape architecture and has been a staple in our previous meetings. So happy to have the team here. And I'll kick it over to Gavin. Go for it.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. And thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully we give you a lot of information today. I want to start with just a quick overview of the project itself. So the West Oakland Link, it's part of a larger Bay Skyway project and part of the Bay Trail. It will provide a safe 15-foot wide connection for bicyclists and pedestrians to travel between the West Oakland neighborhood, the Port of Oakland, and the Bay Bridge Trail going over to Wibblewin Island. The project itself consists of about 2 miles of low-stress multi-use paths. It's planned to connect to a future Grand Avenue protected bike lane that would go to downtown. And we're going to cover a lot of the landscaping and amenities based on community input. As we move to the next slide, this project is part of a kind of a much bigger effort that the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and Bay Area Toll Authority are looking at, called the Bay Skyway, which looks to bridge the gap between San Francisco and the East Bay for people traveling by walking or traveling by bike. And so the focus of today is going to be the West Oakland Link, which is circled on the top right there, but it's made possible by the existing eastbound path. And in collaboration, we are working with the City of San Francisco on the Wibblewin Island multi-use path to get people down to Treasure Island, and then also a connection with a frequent ferry. So that's kind of our first phase that we're working on for the Bay Skyway. That will be followed up eventually with the westbound path, a path hanging off the side of the westbound that will allow people to walk or bike all the way over to San Francisco. Next slide. So as I mentioned, this is the West Oakland Link is a key Oakland connection to the Bay Skyway. The individual projects are there on the left, but it's really part of this kind of regional bicycle highway network that's being formed at this time of protected bike lanes, for all ages and ability. And so, the map on the right kind of shows some of the distances that, you'd be able to travel in times using e-bikes, which are becoming more prominent in the region. And I'm also excited to kind of announce that, we were awarded, the project, the Bay Skyway was awarded about $24 million just this morning through the RM3 Safe Routes to Transit Bay Trail program, which is really exciting. About 7.5 million of that will go to the West Oakland Link, and I'll talk about funding in a sec. But there was another project that I think is also really exciting and related to this, which is it's called the Emeryville 40th Street Complete Streets Project. But as part of it, there's an Emeryville Bay Trail gap closure. And so this is actually the remaining section from the existing eastbound path where it stops now at IKEA. And this will bring it up and connect to the Bay Trail over on the water side of Emeryville, allowing, once the West Oakland Link's open, continuous trips on multi-use paths all the way from West Oakland to the Richmond Ferry. So very exciting that that's also being funded and moving forward. Next slide. So in terms of funding and timeline, we've been working really hard over the last few years as we've been designing the project to really work on securing funding. So we are currently have secured about 57 million in construction funding. And there's about $35 million in state and local grants pending. So although the total cost of the project has gone up as costs have gone up and is now about $108 million, we have looked at alternatives, which I'm going to run you through, that are able to be funded at certain levels. And so the levels to pay attention to here is we do believe we will be able to at least secure $64 million, within the next few months. And then there's a potential for us to secure up to $92 million for the project. And that's if we're successful on a state Solutions for Congested Corridor grant for the whole Bay Skyway. And so I just want you to pay attention to those numbers because those will relate to kind of build out scenarios I'll be presenting next. Our current timeline, go back there, the previous slide. Our current timeline, there is the Bay Bridge Forward multi-use path project that we hope that is also being delivered by MTC, and the hope is that that opens up in the spring or summer of 2026. That path will be able to stay open during construction of the West Oakland Link. There might be a little bit of disruption, but we'll work to make sure that that stays open. And then the West Oakland Link, design, we expect that to be complete by next year. That's kind of a deadline for us to get all our ducks in order. Then we'll go out to bid and procurement. That takes some time, but we do hope to have shovels in the ground actually building at the beginning of 2027 and to open in the spring of 2029. And yes, those costs are inflated into the future for the mid-year of construction. Next slide. So really, I know that we've shown a lot in the past of kind of what the project is. There is some kind of major changes or adjustments that have been made on the left side, which I'll get into in a minute. But this is the complete full build out of the project. This is even a little bit beyond the $108 million because it includes what you see as segment 6 in green, and that's a bridge over the railway. And so that's that's moving forward on a different timeline because of some of the technical difficulties of building over rail. But this is the full project. It starts with segment 1 over in the neighborhood. Segment 2 is a ramp that goes up parallel to Grand Avenue as it goes to Frontage Road. Section 3 is a loop ramp. Section 4 is the main section over the port area. This is all elevated. And then section 5 is a ramp down to Maritime, and section 6 is that bridge I just discussed. And segment 7 was previously the touchdown, and I'll explain why that, I'll explain the change in the touchdown, but we are still planning to build a touchdown directly to the Bay Trail. Next slide. So just to give you an idea, what we hope opens in the spring of next year would be a temporary 8-foot wide multi-use path that would run all the way from Mandela parallel. It would run on Grand Avenue. It would be taken as part of a road diet from Grand Avenue, and then would run all the way down to Maritime. And so when this path opens, it will not be the path that will carry you over the roads and the rails, and it won't be, wide and have the amenities, but it will be a connection. And it's really important that we start allowing people to kind of make this connection and get out to the Bay Trail and the East Band path. Following that, if, depending on the funding that we receive, sorry, next slide. So I had talked earlier, we do feel very confident that we will be able to secure at least $64 million through different forms of local funding with our existing secured funding. And so we believe this will allow us to at least build the port area infrastructure. So this is segment 4. This is the area once you get over the rail tracks, this is the elevated path that will run to the west and kind of down onto Burma Road. And so this is a major component. This gets you over a lot of the challenging, dangerous features out there, like the rail tracks and the truck routes. And so we think this itself would be a big improvement on the Bay Bridge Forward. But we're really hoping that we can kind of secure that next increment of funding to start construction on an even better project. So next slide. The next kind of version would be the $92 million. This is if we're successful with the Solutions for Congested Corridor funding. This would add really all of the area, the development of the alleyway, the improvements in West Oakland. This is, it would add the loop ramp. So that's section 3, which is kind of a big ramp, improved ramp. And so with the $92 million, which is kind of our target and we feel very hopeful about, we will be able to deliver, almost all of the benefits of the full project we are trying to deliver. Now, the parts that we wouldn't be able to deliver are the 2 ramps. One was segment 2, which was a new ramp parallel to Grand that went up to Frontage Road. That would still be you'd still be able to do that route with the Bay Bridge Forward path, which we'd keep in place. And then there would be, instead of a secondary ramp going down to Maritime Street, we would also utilize the Bay Bridge Forward path in this scenario. Next slide. All right, so there is a kind of a major change that we had to make. We ran into some right-of-way issues, and we weren't able to access at this time the land where we had originally been planning to touch down the path. So we had to pivot, and what we're going to be doing now is instead we're going to be taking a slightly different route over the rail tracks, and we're going to be touching down on the east side of Burma Road. And the east side of Burma Road is, it will come down, and that picture that you see up on the top there, we will be doing a road diet on Burma Road to create a 9-foot wide bike path using the existing roadway, and then we'll utilize the existing 5-foot sidewalk. So we'll create kind of a path. There will be a solid cement K-rail barrier between bikes and traffic. And although this route will run all the way down Burma Road, and I'm going to show you the kind of entrances to the existing path, but understanding that people are going to want to be able to cross back and go to Emeryville, the section at the bottom there kind of shows how that will happen. So the bridge will touch down. When it comes down, that ramp will be a 10-foot wide ramp, and then there'll be a 10-foot wide multi-use path that you can follow the blue arrows and still go to Emeryville. Well, most people, we do believe, will continue down Burma Road. Next slide. And so these are just some of the entrances. So if you go back one, we're going to have 3 entrances once you're down. So you'll be able to backtrack to Emeryville. Can you go back one slide? So the first entrance will be to the Bridgyard building. This is an event space. And so we will have a direct entrance to that from Burma Road. So you can see the path up there in green. That's on the south side of Burma. You'll be able to cross over to the Bridgyard. Next. Additionally, we will have a connection to the Judge John Shutter Shoreline Park restroom and to the Bay Trail there, to the East Band path. So that will be the kind of second connection if you're going where you'll be able to access the path. And then the next one, next slide, will be directly into, next slide, please. this is directly into the existing service road there. And so our current design is taking us to the cul-de-sac, but we will be working with East Bay Regional Parks District to, make sure that it's a comfortable route once it gets into that area. They're going to be kind of adding to the park with some trails and some picnic areas out there. And so we'll coordinate with them on that design to make sure that, we're supporting in a way that allows people and cyclists to comfortably transition from our path into that park and then to the East Band path. Next slide. So that was a lot of information. So I think we're going to take a few questions here, and I know there might have been a few in the chat that Nicole's been monitoring, but we do want to kind of give clarification on what we are looking to build. And I gave those scenarios, and there is a chance that we do secure more than the 92, but trying to give everyone a very realistic picture of what we might have to do because of the current kind of funding environment. So is there any questions kind of about the overview, the Burma Road and the phasing?
Gavin, I see Ray's hand up. Ray, go for it.
Thank you, Nicole. Curious, you probably know that there's a developer would like to put in a marine terminal right almost next to this project that would export coal. How would that have any effect on this project that you're are you taking that into account? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, we're taking that into account. I think our current design avoids those properties, but we are, they are an important stakeholder and somebody that we are working with on the design to make sure it works with everyone. And so that is the ongoing process now. It was quite a significant change when we ran into the, when we found out that we weren't going to be able to touch down in the original location. And so, there's definitely, the original location would still be the ideal situation, but there is some good parts about this. I guess the other thing I'd say is now the path is farther away from I-80. And so there's less of that kind of direct air pollution you feel when you're beside it and less noise. But we are working with the developer.
I'm glad you're working with them, but so what I'm hearing then is that the developer has sort of limited that's where you were hoping, where on some of the development plan you were hoping to have that touchdown, and that's not that agreement didn't work out. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, yeah, there's a number of issues with that property there that kind of prevents us from going. So it's no one not allowing us. It's more kind of legally where things are and stuff. So it's not there's no one preventing that from happening per se. It's more of just we wouldn't be able to get access in time to build this project, and we have funding lined up, but we do have to go in and build and by a certain date to keep that funding.
Thank you.
I see a question in the chat from Alexis, and she's asking if there are funding gaps, does that delay the timeline for parts of the project, or does it mean those parts get cut altogether?
Yeah, so we are still fully committed to, building out the full project. Segment 6, as you see there, even a touchdown where the original touchdown was going to be. So we've, trying to be realistic about it and looking where our funding is, we just developed these kind of two scenarios that we think are very doable. One we think we'll definitely get to, and the other is, kind of if all our funding lines up. But that does not mean we will be dropping these. This is part of a, much bigger effort to get people all the way to San Francisco. And so even if we're not able to build some now, we'll be able to kind of design them and keep them on the shelf if funding becomes available. But also, when you look at kind of the cost to build the west span, a lot of these kind of changes are almost rounding errors on that. And so, anything that wouldn't be able to build now, we would look at packaging when we were able to move to the west span or before. I mean, we're designing it all. We're going to get it all ready to go. And so even, if whatever we start with now, there'll always be other sections that if we can identify funding, we'll build those sections.
Alexis, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Keep them coming. There's a lot of changes, lots of excitement.
Well, we can also, there's a number of other kind of sections here, so we can always come back to these too. So if there's no questions now, stew on it, and we can come back and get further questions.
Well, Gavin, let me jump in one more. This is very interesting to see the maps and everything, but it also might sort of bring it home a little bit more in a different way if you had renderings from the ground level of how these things would look. And that would be, I think that would add to your presentation if that's available.
Yeah, so we're gonna show some of the more details around, and we can make additional renderings available. We can work with Nicole and the Indicators Project to publish them. There is a lot of renderings. You're gonna see a bunch of them coming up in these next sections. And so it was not showing all of them. I think we have less renderings maybe on the segment 4 because there's been less focus on kind of getting the amenities right and the look right for the community there. But we can definitely work with Nicole to get up on the website, additional renderings to understand this, because I understand it's 2D and this is a 3D project, right? It's all elevated. So.
And Ray, thank you for bringing that up. When I present at West Oakland Neighbors, we will have ground level drawings so that this actually makes sense to people who live here.
We can go to the next slide.
Gavin, I'm going to pause real quickly. I just saw Patrick's comment. I'm concerned about the conflicts this creates on Burma. Can you talk to why coming down on Maritime wasn't an option to reduce duplicity and connect in with the current trail on the other side of the street?
So one of the main goals of this project was we've always assumed that the development, the port there was going to happen, and we would have to get cyclists and pedestrians across the future rail tracks. There's 4 rail tracks that sit at Burma Road, and so that was always one of the primary goals of this project was avoiding that those rail tracks, they could have shuffling trains, which are really dangerous. There's a lot of reasons. So a lot of the safety concern was to do that. And so that's, really to maintain the project and the funding, we did need to make sure that we carried this over those rail tracks. And so that's been one of the primary goals. And so that's why we didn't look at a version of just bringing it down onto Maritime. Also onto Maritime, we could have brought it down. Yeah, it would have been challenging to bring it down there because then you would still have to cross big truck driveways and truck routes and those rail tracks. And so that was the reason why we continued on with this option. I don't know if that answers it.
Okay, I think I am up. So good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk a bit about the bicycle and pedestrian design features in a bit more detail in some of the more interesting locations along the project route. And this slide is just to emphasize that the project team is referencing local and national standards and best practices in developing the design. So shown here on the screen are a couple of guidance resources from NACTO, or National Association of City Transportation Officials. We also rely heavily on sources like the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or the MUTCD, as traffic engineers say, and that governs standards for signage and pavement markings. And finally, I've shown a screenshot of the public right-of-way accessibility guidelines to emphasize that this is intended to be an all ages and all abilities facility, so comfortable for everyone to use. Moving on to the next slide. So this just shows some of the design elements in the toolkit to enhance accessibility, safety, and support wayfinding. So in terms of safety, there's traffic calming strategies such as curb extensions, speed cushions. Accessibility elements would include standards on facility width, detectable surfaces where needed, and finally, intersection crossing markings and pavement markings are important both from a safety perspective and wayfinding and guidance. Next slide, please. And so this just shows some of the different types of wayfinding signs in particular that are going to be incorporated into the design. And now that we've reached 65% design level, we are going to go in and fine tune the signage and really determine what is needed where. So wayfinding signs will guide the user along the route with the route name. It will direct travelers to their destinations by direction and indicate where turns need to be made to stay on the route. Other functions would be indicating an upcoming crossing of a roadway. And finally, pavement markings can also be an important wayfinding component, providing guidance on the direction of travel and the modes that are expected to use different portions of the facility. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to be doing is looking at a few locations in detail, and this is just to orient you. So we'll start out at the Burma Road touchdown of the link ramp that leads to the connections to the Bay Bridge and other trails. Spend a fair amount of time looking at the plan or the ground view at the West Grand Avenue alleyways and Wood Street, and finally end up at the intersection of West Grand Avenue and Mandela Parkway at the beginning of the project. Next slide, please. So starting at the Burma Road ramp transition, here you can see the directional signage is going to be really important as travelers coming from the West Oakland Link facility will need to be guided to the appropriate direction for their intended destination, whether they're heading towards the park or the Bay Bridge Trail, or making a U-turn and getting back on the path towards Emeryville. This will also be a transition area where users will be directed onto the separate two-way bike path and sidewalk on Burma Road, or onto the other shared use paths. So signage, pavement markings will be really critical here. Some of the safety features would include different colored bike lanes. There will be delineators and buffers between the different paths, and also providing a separation from vehicular traffic on Burma Road. In terms of accessibility, we'll want to incorporate different color and texture in that transition zone, and pay attention. Of course, the design will follow all applicable standards for accessibility in the slopes of the ramp. Next slide, please. So now we move to the vicinity of the Grand Avenue alleyways and Wood Street. And this cross-section depicts the ultimate build-out concept that's currently proposed at the narrowest point. And so under the current proposal for the design, the south or eastbound West Grand Avenue alleyway would be closed to vehicular traffic. This would allow for a very generous shared use two-way path in place of the south alleyway, and then a landscaped area would separate the shared use path from proposed amenities that would be located under the existing West Grand Avenue overhead structure. Now, the north or westbound West Grand Avenue alleyway would remain open to one-way traffic. That would be a shared travel lane for bicycles and motor vehicles, and there was an existing sidewalk there. I will mention that the project team is currently still working with City of Oakland to address some concerns that need to be taken care of before we can move forward with this proposal and the associated amenities. So there are still some issues with regard to emergency vehicle access, property access and property rights of the parcels adjacent to the south alleyway, as well as hammering out a maintenance agreement. So because those questions are kind of still in play, we've been asked to also reconsider keeping that south alleyway open for vehicular traffic as an alternative. However, I will mention that would have some pretty challenging design that would result in some design constraints and trade-offs just due to the need to retain space for the future overhead structure. There would not be space for much more beyond a pretty narrow shared travel lane and likely not even a wider sidewalk. So for these reasons, we're really hoping to hear back from the community for the currently proposed design in this area, and hear back whether you support the concept or have any concerns. Next slide, please. And so just as a reminder, here are some of the changes in the roadway network that would be associated with the currently proposed design. So again, one of the south alleyway would be closed to vehicular traffic. And then south of Grand Avenue, both Willow Street and Campbell Street would become dead end for vehicle traffic. North of West Grand Avenue, the Campbell Avenue intersection would become right in and right out only for vehicular movements. So this is just a reminder of the traffic changes proposed with the current design. Next slide. If we can go ahead and thank you. So with all that preamble, here is a plan view of the currently proposed design. So in terms of wayfinding, directional signage will be needed to guide travelers from the West Oakland Link path and the alleyway to across Wood Street, which will remain open for vehicular traffic, and turn right and then left to access the approach to the loop ramp, which is depicted in pink towards the top of this schematic diagram. High visibility crosswalks and extensions of the bicycle lane are also wayfinding elements. Again, the north alleyway, some cyclists may choose to use that as the approach to the loop ramp. Some of the safety features would include the standard warning signs for drivers to alert them to the upcoming crossing with a trail or path, and as well as the T intersection for drivers in the north Grand Avenue alleyway. We would incorporate speed tables or cushions in all the approaches to keep vehicle speeds low. Curb extensions will be incorporated into the intersection design. And most importantly, under this proposal, the vehicular conflicts on the south alleyway would be eliminated. In terms of accessibility, the loop ramp will provide a lower stress alternative to traveling on the West Grand Avenue structure, and will of course include all the standard accessibility features such as detectable surfaces at the curb ramps. Next slide, please. And so the last location, whoops, go back to the Mandela and intersection. There we go. Okay, so again, many of the same design elements would be incorporated here. There's a lot going on, so the wayfinding is going to have to be fine-tuned very carefully. There are a number of high visibility crosswalks and bicycle lane extension markings that would be added. The curb ramps would be reconfigured to align with pedestrian desire lines. And again, all the standard accessibility features such as detectable surfaces and the bicycle facilities will all be protected. So that is the last slide I had regarding bicycle and pedestrian design. I think we'll pause here to see if there's any questions.
That was a lot of information.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with Ms. Owens. I see your hand.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I don't know if you can see me.
We can.
Okay. Hi. I had a question about the bike lanes. Are there going to be 2 bike lanes, like one on each side of the trail? Or the bike's going to use the same coming in and going out, you know, bi-directional?
Yes, so for the West Oakland Link itself, it will be a bi-directional shared use path. And there are at various locations along the alignment, there are parallel bike lanes, as you can see here in the Mandela
Mhm.
Parkway.
Okay, yeah, because I was just kind of wondering how the auto traffic and the foot traffic, how they impact each other, you know? Because if the bike lane is to the extreme right, that means the walking lanes are to the outside. And for them to change directions or whatever, are they going to have to cross into the walking traffic? So I was
Yeah.
wondering that.
I think, I mean, I think of the way to answer that, like, so, you know, for most of it, the path and where it's elevated and stuff, it will be 15-foot wide, and there'll be basically 10 feet that is associated for bicycles, 5 in each direction, and then a 5-foot walking path. Those will have kind of like lines showing, but there's no barriers or anything, right? So it will be kind of up
Yeah.
to everyone. And so that's kind of where, once you're up and elevated and we have kind of more control, that's what you'll experience. It will be similar as if you've ever been out on the East Span. They do it that way out there on that elevated section. The answer is a little more complicated when you get to, you know, the alleyways and stuff. The alleyway, depending on the width, will likely kind of be a shared use path. We'll hope everyone will slow down a little bit. But there is, as Aaron mentioned, you know, looking at this diagram, we do believe people who are, you know, coming down Grand Avenue on a bicycle will want to continue to go, you know, straight through the alleyway in some cases. And so, you know, we're protecting it for the first bit, and then they'll have to bike in what is the existing alleyway now.
Okay.
So and that's if you're going kind of west on Grand. So, and then, you know, in terms of here at these intersections, and this is why I say it's a little bit of a jamble, you know, really to slow everyone down and to really make it safe for bicyclists and pedestrians, this will be a little bit more of a shared space at the intersection. Will be very wide. It's hard to tell from these diagrams, but these crosswalks are like 15 feet wide because it's kind of for everyone to cross at the same time. And so this is just a method that has been used in a lot of places to kind of, you know, slow everyone down. Everyone goes up onto the kind of curb, and just, you know, has been shown to kind of be safer for everyone, but also kind of creates more of like a plaza space there.
I think I got it. Yeah, I think I got it. I think I'll do better when I see it like right in my face and I can kind of better understand it.
Well, if you want to come to our in-person event on Thursday, I would be happy to kind of walk you through on the map a little bit more, any of those details too.
Where is that going to be?
We'll kind of announce at the end, but it will be at the Prescott Night Market on Thursday.
Oh, at night?
Not the night market, sorry, the Prescott Market. So yeah, it starts at 5 on Thursday, but we'll talk about those details at the end.
Okay, thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, and Miss Owens, I can always over coffee walk you through the designs, because I think one of the big announcements here that Aaron is highlighting is that the alleyway that everyone expected to be closed off to cars in one direction, it's now going to be shared because of currently that's what the city prefers. And I think
No, let me correct you on that. So
Go ahead.
we're still investigating it. So we just don't want to, we're working with the city, and we you know, we kind of want to ask people what they think about that, if they do want it closed. But there's challenges we have to overcome with the city to make it possible to close the alleyway. It's not something that the city's used to doing. So I don't think, yeah, sorry to jump in, Nicole.
No, I appreciate it. Gavin is a lot more diplomatic than I am. And this is why the community feedback is extremely important to whether or not pedestrians and bicyclists should be sharing the road with cars. Ray, I see your hand up.
Well, thank you again, Nicole. I'm a bicyclist, but looking at it from the vehicle point of view, if the eastbound alleyway is closed, what is the proposed route for vehicles? Would it be like up 20th Street or up 24th Street up to say Campbell Street or Mandela to get back to West Grand from Wood Street?
Yeah, maybe actually, we do actually have a bunch of diagrams to show that. So we could
Yeah.
actually show you exactly how that will work. So Julia, do you mind going kind of to the end, to the extra
I think
slides?
it starts at number 62.
But thank you, Ray. We kind of anticipated this question, and it is, it's important to note that, there is a impact on vehicle trips. It's a slight time difference, but we want to take all of that into consideration. So I'll just walk through these. So the current if you're coming down Grand, so we'll go through a number of these. If you're coming down Grand and you wanted to turn onto Campbell Street, take a left onto Campbell Street, we will be closing the ability to take a direct left. So you would have to go all the way down to Mandela and go around. The reason being is we do expect an increased amount of people that would be biking or traveling on that side, and we don't want them to be sideswiped, and we don't want people coming out the other way. And so that would be the first one. If we go to the next one, which might be a slide up instead of down. This is also in the current state. If you're going up Campbell Street, you are able to go through Campbell and cross Grand if you're brave enough, or take a right or left onto Grand. And so that will also kind of be limited. So to go to the other side of 24 or to 24th Street, you would have to now go around and or take Wood Street or the other one. So those would be additional movements that would be limited. I guess it would probably the next slide up. There we go. Yeah. Oh. Seems like we're having some, okay, let's do this one and then we'll go to the next one. So here, another thing is using the alleyway. So the alleyway would be closed off. So instead of going through the alleyway to get onto Grand, you would have to go to 20th Street or 24th Street. That's another one that would be impacted. And then finally, the last impact would be on, next slide. Seems like this is a very big presentation, so it must be challenging to load. Let's see. All right, one more, number 2 out of 4. All right, and so this one would be, yeah, so this route, and as we try and get back to that, this would be instead of traveling down Campbell and crossing or taking a left onto Grand, you would have to either go over to Mandela. You'd still be able to take that right onto Grand to get out from there, but those are the kind of major, kind of changes to traffic patterns. Nothing is more than, a minute or so of extra travel time, but there is some inconvenience.
Okay, Gavin, you've explored a lot of options. I go through those intersections fairly frequently. You very rarely see anybody go across West Grand on Campbell Street.
I'm glad.
And you really, I don't know if any of your partners have done a vehicle count, but I don't really see that many cars going up and down those alleys. I mean, vehicles. I mean, they do use them, but there's not a lot of traffic flow on those.
Well, and I think we can thank the city for that, because, with the ballers coming in and the repaving of 20th Street made that a lot more doable. Because I think when we started this project and started going to the community about a year and a half, 2 years ago, we did hear a lot of concern about that, but that was because 20th Street was in such poor repair and the alleyway was the only reasonably paved street in that area. And so I think we can kind of thank the city and the ballers for kind of jumping on that last year and getting that done in a way that kind of prevents it from, now there is much less need for those alleyways than there was when, no one wanted to drive on 20th.
Well, and the ongoing removal of all the railroad tracks has been really helpful for bicyclists as well. So I'll shut up.
I sprained my ankle last year on one of those in the rain, so I'm there with you.
Tia highlighted the fact that there's current signage that's new where cars cannot actually make a left onto Grand from Campbell. So
Okay,
that
great.
definitely has helped. We have another question from a Brian asking, will the turn limitations force more trucks onto Mandela Parkway?
I don't believe many trucks take the alleyways, and I think mainly the truck route is people are driving on Mandela and not the alleyway itself or Willow or those turns onto the alley from Willow and Campbell because it's very narrow even in the existing condition. So, but we could. I know we did do a traffic study and stuff, so we could kind of look into that more. But I don't believe so. I don't know if anyone else has knowledge of that.
That's definitely something we will want to pay attention to, and make sure that there's enforcement in addition to signage, reminding trucks to not use Mandela Parkway. Another question from the chat is, where's the line of project ownership between WoLink and the Grand Avenue Mobility Plan in terms of the Mandela intersection?
So the city's plan to there's a number of projects that are taking place here. There's the Bay Bridge Forward, which people are probably aware that there is a kind of one block between Mandela and Peralta Mandela and Peralta and Campbell, where there is that protected bike lane now. That's getting ready for this project that is supposed to be delivered open next spring, the Bay Bridge Forward project. So as part of that, they did do some intersection improvements, but it was limited in scope. We will come in and kind of do more extensive improvements, with our project. But we are basically leaving, once you get to the, about 100 feet to the other side of Grand, once you pass Mandela going towards downtown. At that point, it will just meet for now the existing project that's been built in place. There is a bus stop that's on the south side of Grand, and we will be kind of improving that, adding a shelter, but also putting a bike lane behind it so people can wait in front of the bike lane. So it'll be bus waiting area, bike lane, sidewalk. So we are doing some improvements there, but our main focus is just making sure the intersection is safe as possible. And that's kind of as wide of a scope as our project kind of is clear to work on. And then we'll wait for the city to come in when they do their, Grand Avenue Complete Streets project.
Patrick, I see your comment about asking that we close the alley to cars if we're going to bring a great biking and walking feature to West Oakland. As long as fire can access the path in emergencies, it should be closed. Thank you for encouraging the city to prioritize this. And that is still the priority. And Gavin and Aaron are showing alternatives. And it's, again, very important that the community voices their preferences in order to bring all of this back to the city and let them make the right choice. Let's see, Gabriel, there are a number of housing developments planned along Wood Street. How have y'all accounted for this in your designs?
Yeah, and so, and maybe we can go back to, one of the kind of showing the design slides. But we've been thinking a lot about those developments. That is one of the reasons we do believe we added this very early in the process when we identified the kind of need. We did add that loop ramp, and I know it's not showing here, but the Wood Street loop ramp. And so that's really a kind of a direct access for all of these new developments. And then, our concern was always, if we create this path and it's going to connect to this huge network, kind of around the bay of these paths, these kind of bicycle highways, we did want to make sure people feel safe and welcome when they get into this part of West Oakland. And so that's where a lot of these ideas behind putting a dog park and some of the amenities and stuff, which we're going to show in a second when we get to Matt's part. And so really the idea is we want to kind of make this a lively area and an area that, feels comfortable for people to kind of hang out in, so that there is that, there is people around at all times when people are coming in and out, for that feeling of safety. And so the Wood Street on ramp is one, but then also, we do believe that all these new residents will be able to use some of these kind of amenities that we're hoping to show. And that's why we're going to really work with the city and really try and build out the alleyway, if we can, in a way that is kind of for the community space. And so our next section, we will get into that a little bit more. And I wonder, Nicole, if we should kind of jump into that now.
I'm going to take Miss Owen's question and we'll answer it as best as we can.
Okay, thank
Before
you.
we
This
jump
is
into
gonna
landscaping.
be quick. It's gonna lead into the next thing about I want to know if there is going to be like a refreshing station where people can maybe get water going across, because when it becomes really hot and you're trekking, you might run out of water and stuff. So that's what my question is.
That's a great. So I don't think we explicitly right now have one in the design. This has been brought up before, and it is something we will mark down and really take another look at. I don't see it as being too big of an issue, because there is water running around this site right now. So we will. I know this has been mentioned before. We had looked at doing it at the original touchdown over at the Bay Trail, that is no longer, part of this phase of the build out. But now that we do have these amenities here, we will take a look at that. And then, anyone, it's a great idea if people take the survey. So there's a survey attached to this, throw that in the survey. That always helps us get that feedback and, keep on mentioning and stuff. But we are definitely making a note of that, and something I would also like to see. I mean, with climate change, it's only going to get hotter. So
Thank you.
All right, we're moving to landscaping, and Matt will walk us through that.
All right, thank you so much. I'm super
Yeah, sorry, let
excited.
me just pause for a second. I need
Yeah.
to get back to the slide. One moment.
Okay.
All right, maybe.
yeah,
Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much. All right.
Sure.
I'll just dive right in. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about a very important topic, which is the landscape and the integration of planting and amenities and site activation strategies that have been talked about and are really sort of the defining features of this project. And then we're going to zoom way out and talk about sort of the identity and opportunity for color to be a cool branding element for this project, and then sort of dive into some cool opportunities for site furnishings that Sarah's going to present. So if you'll dive into the next slide, I'll kick us off with our planting criteria, just acknowledging that plants are going to play a very important role in really softening and making these spaces feel livable, habitable, welcoming, and beautiful places for people to gather and enjoy. These are tough environments. And so I kind of wanted to just speak a little bit about the considerations that go into the plant selection. We need things that are going to be, native to the area. They're going to survive our weather. They're going to like the rain in the winter and the dry summers. They're going to provide for habitat for native species, pollinators, birds, and things like that. But also thinking about, low water use. Like I said, we have very dry summers and falls, and so things that are going to thrive in these really harsh conditions. We're also looking at opportunities for plants to be filtering mechanisms for the air, for stormwater, and also sequester carbon. And like I said, they're just really amazing sort of character defining features that are going to really make these places feel habitable and safe and welcoming for the community. Next slide, please. Here you can see we've got two slides here, one on our trees and one on our understory plants. Here you can see our tree selections, and these have been fine-tuned, and we have a wide variety that you can see here because we have a wide variety of conditions that we're trying to design for, different planter sizes and soil volumes, things that are going to provide sort of seasonality, some evergreen, some deciduous, some that are selected particularly to filter the air, provide shade, all of those things. And so we'll sort of dive in area by area and talk about where these are currently located, and we're going to solicit your feedback on that. Next slide is focused on the understory plants. These are things that are growing along the ground plane, and I just wanted to mention that all of these are relatively low in stature. They're not going to grow super high, so we want to be mindful of the safety aspects of the plants that we're selecting. Trees that are going to grow up and overhead and provide a nice shady canopy, and then lower plants that are going to sort of soften the ground plane, provide for that seasonality and that zone in between, so people can see cars and just sort of clear sight lines so everybody can kind of see what's going on around them. People are going to be moving through this space relatively quickly in some instances. In other places, they're going to be hanging out, but just taking all of that into account as we fine tune our plant palette. And again, we'll sort of dive in area by area and show you where we're applying these. Next slide. Today, we're going to focus on these areas. We're going to start off on the right-hand side, Mandela Parkway, talk about Campbell and Willow Street, the opportunities that we see in the future that if those are able to be closed down and really turned into people-activated spaces. We're going to talk about the Wood Street Plaza, that underpass area that's been recently cleaned up, and it's a really cool opportunity for activating under the roadway and the Caltrains right-of-way. We're going to talk about the loop and the really cool environment that we're creating there under the pillars of the overhead roadways. And then last but not least, we're going to touch on Burma Road since that design is somewhat new. I did want to dive in a little bit and show you a little bit in more detail, sort of the design approach there. Next slide. As I mentioned, we're going to dive into Mandela, and there's a lot shown here, so I'll just sort of like walk through sort of at a high level. You can see what Aaron had spoken about earlier, where the curbs have been moved out. Lots of attention paid towards the new pedestrian crossings, making those wide and generous enough to welcome bikers and pedestrians alike, but also looking at roadway traffic, making sure that trucks are able to maneuver around here without sort of overrunning the curb and, things like that. So a lot of attention has been paid to making this a really safe place for people to cross the street at various speeds. We have opportunities here in the Mandela Greenway in particular for an expanded hardscape zone where we're continuing to think about street art and painting on the ground plane as a way to help enliven and sort of activate those spaces, opportunities for the community and local artists to sort of have an imprint on this space, and we'll continue to sort of study those opportunities. We do have some other places where we'd like to explore, sort of celebrating the history of this place, and I think those are ideas that were brought in previous community meetings, sort of recognizing the historic shoreline, the previous freeway. And we also have, and we'll show you here in a second, the beacons, so those monumental the pink towers that have been shown previously that really, I think, help to announce the entry to the West Oakland Link and create that kind of monumental beacon to sort of invite you in. Here where the trail begins, we want to kick things off with a focus on art and storytelling. We have an area for a mosaic that's going to be further informed by an artist. We've got some new seating and site amenities. I think this would be a great place for a water fountain if we're able to have one. But again, just creating a place for people to gather and kind of sit in a protected space with this new planting and the bikeway sort of in front of you. You can see the bikeway in pink sort of traveling off to your left. We're also working to buffer the space as best we can with street trees that are going to help buffer the car traffic, being mindful of canopy height and the trucks that are driving by, selecting species. As you can see here up on the right, the brush box, they're going to be tall enough so that they don't interfere with the truck traffic, and as well as provide some shade on the path here. I think that's it. We can move to the next slide where we can actually see this place in 3D. Here, we're sort of crossing the street, looking at Peralta Studios. Here you can see, as I mentioned, sort of that improved crosswalk and curb ramp condition, and the application of the street art that we think will really create a kind of a pop and wow factor here, and really kind of signal that this is like something cool and it really invite you in to use the trail here. You can see some of the furnishings and some things in the background, but really just wanted to give you a sense of what this new intersection would look like here. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to dive into both Campbell and Willow Street alleyways, first touching here on Campbell. And again, this is in the condition where we're able to close down the road. You can see the bollards called out here. That's sort of going to be the limit of private vehicle use. If we're able to do this. And wanted to recognize that right now there's a really amazing food truck. And if you guys haven't tried it yet, they have really great tacos here. And we wanted to provide a place for that to continue to happen. And so here you can see at the end of the vehicular access zone, we have an opportunity for the food truck to park. We'd like to invite seating with tables and chairs, maybe some picnic tables out here, and actually provide places for people to sit. I think right now people are sitting maybe on logs or just walking to somewhere else, sitting in their car. Did want to note that on the page north side of this screen here, we've got a brand new sidewalk and street trees, new planting. Where currently it's kind of gravel, and as I mentioned, the logs sort of protecting the building there right now. So that'll be replaced with an actual streetscape. We've got opportunities for art on the ground surface, and you can see the bikeway as it travels west over here on the right hand side of the page. We've got a couple tree species options here. The crepe myrtle and the Marina strawberry tree both are flowering, have beautiful sort of trunks. They're a little lower scaled than we thought would be appropriate for this space. And we have a selection here of sort of understory plants that we think that would be appropriate here, just to, you know, soften the ground level space, provide some seasonality, a little pop of color, and things like that. But we do want to get your feedback on these elements. And then otherwise, I think the space is open for play. We're sort of envisioning this as maybe a child-friendly space, street games, maybe kids are out here roller skating or scooting around. Just with the street closed off, it's a really amazing opportunity to sort of activate in a variety of different ways. Next slide. Here we can see a view of that space, as I mentioned, street games and art on the ground playing, places to sit, and really a canvas for the community to activate. You can see in the back a blue food truck sort of parked there at the end, but just to give you a sense of scale and the amount of greening that we're looking at. Quite transformed from what's there right now. So next slide. Here we're looking at Willow Street. Again, this is in the scenario where we're able to close off the street. You can see the line of bollards over on the left that'll protect pedestrians and cyclists on the closed section of the street. Here we're kind of imagining this as a place geared towards more adult recreation. Thinking basketball courts. You know, this could be painted on the ground and a hoop installed on the curb. Ping pong tables, potentially some fitness equipment. You know, weaving in some opportunities for health and wellness and things of that nature. And again, just seating, new sidewalks, new planting to really help soften and buffer this space. Opportunities for street art, as you can see over here on the right. And again, we're sort of traveling west on the bikeway. Here you can see our tree species. Again, some lower scaled flowering trees, the buckeye and the redbud that we thought would be really beautiful and appropriate here. And a slightly different palette here on the ground plane. Again, just thinking about seasonality, hardiness, all of those things that I mentioned at the beginning. Next slide, please. Here's a view of that space. You can see the basketball courts and some of the seating elements that we're proposing. Next slide. All right, the Wood Street underpass. So, we've been looking at this space and have really kind of zeroed in on the opportunity to create a dog park here. I think that there were a lot of different ideas that were explored early on in the project. And since we had basketball courts kind of located in that recreation alley on Willow Street, we thought this would be a great opportunity for a dog park. You know, dog parks are really kind of hubs of life in a lot of communities, and we really want a space that is inviting for people, that's going to invite a lot of activity and eyes, especially in this place, to create a really welcoming and safe environment. Here you can see the alleyway is closed down in this version, we're using street art and site furnishings to help enliven and activate the space underneath the overpass, as well as some additional planting areas to help soften and buffer the space from the truck traffic and surrounding streets. Next slide, please. Here you can see a 3D view of the space. The street art on the ground, the bollards that are protecting it from passing cars. You can see the future beer garden it's in the background there. You think with all of this together, this area is gonna be completely transformed from what it is today. And again, we're really hoping the dog park is a popular place for all of these new housing developments and people to sort of bring their furry children and hang out together underneath the bridge. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about one of my favorite spaces here, which is the loop. I think this is just a really cool feature of the trail network that we're proposing, where you're really sort of embedded underneath this big heavy infrastructure, the overhead roadways up above, and this ramp that's going to traverse through. We really want to play up this notion of a forest in this forest of columns. And so you can see here our areas of planting. We're going to be mounding up the soil. The soil here isn't great, and so these will be sort of three-dimensional kind of hillsides where we're planting the trees where we're able. But really looking to enliven this space with opportunities for history, recognizing the history. There's a 1915 shoreline plaque here. We want to have ample lighting, art, and the beacons that sort of march along the trail, excuse me, to guide you through the space. Here you can see again, our palette on the bottom left-hand side. These are specifically selected to help filter particulate matter and things of that nature, and be sort of tall enough to create that under canopy in the forest kind of effect that we're after. We've got some of our understory plants up on the top right, again looking for just vibrant colors and seasonality that'll be inviting throughout the year. And if you go to the next slide, we've got an updated rendering of the space. And here you can see as you're sort of just taking off from the ground, sort of approaching the elevated loop, that approach to the forest, and that really cool kind of dynamic between the constructed sort of like columns and the actual forest that we hope to create here. Next slide. And last but not least, just because some of those earlier diagrams weren't super descriptive, we wanted to show you in a bit more detail what this touchdown at Burma Road is going to look like. The dashed line sort of coming from page right is the overhead structure that will then touch down over here on page left where you have the arrival plaza. This is where the overhead meets the at grade, and we'll have an arrival moment. Again, opportunity for art, maybe another one of those beacons. Because of space constraints, most of our planting is actually underneath the elevated roadway. So that pink line path just below the dash line is actually the connection from the arrival plaza back to the Bay Trail, which you can see over on the right, that green rendered path is actually the Bay Trail connection over to Emeryville. So that's going to be sort of your route, turn around and travel back that way to connect to the Bay Trail. And tucked underneath the structure is going to be some seating and site amenities, under the shade of that overhead, as well as some new planting, stormwater planters, as well as some regular kind of streetscape planters that we're looking at. So here on the bottom right, you can see some of those species of plants that we'll look for underneath the structure. You'll notice we don't currently have any trees in this view, but I will mention that we are looking for opportunities for tree planting. Page left further down Burmer Road, where we don't have any conflicts with utilities and some of the other things that we're having to work around. But we can follow up on that and some later exhibits as we continue to develop that design. Next slide. Now I'm going to change gears a little bit and zoom way out. And we want to acknowledge that we have been sort of utilizing this fuchsia color in a lot of our exhibits throughout the project. We think color is an important unifying element for the project, along with everything else I've been talking about, the furnishings, the landscape, the beacons, the art, the lighting. These are all things that we want to be easily identifiable, that this is the West Oakland Link. And we think color is a really important defining feature of that. And I will admit that I think the more the team has sort of worked with this placeholder color, the more we've sort of fallen in love with it. And we wanted to take this opportunity to get your feedback on that. So, reasons we think color is important. We want to announce that this is something new and something different from all of that existing infrastructure. It's very concrete, heavy, gray. We want something that stands out from that. Differentiating this from all of that existing infrastructure. We want this to signal vibrancy and that there is something new and new life here. There's new excitement, new opportunities to travel and engage. And I think that's basically it at sort of a high level, why we think this is a cool sort of like branding and identifying feature of the project. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
quickly, I'm going to just jump in here because there is a survey that Nicole put in there, and I would say we are asking kind of to get the feedback on this color. I know we've been showing it a lot, and we've kind of all really like it, but we do want to kind of do a gut check. And so, please give your feedback on the color in the survey if you love it, if you don't like it, all feedback is good feedback. So, yeah, I just kind of promoting that survey, and then we'll let Sarah take the next section.
Yep.
Thanks so much. Everybody can hear me, yes? Okay. So I've been at this a while and actually started working on the early Gateway Park master plan that invented this idea of the bike path, which was really exciting. But that only really came about because of the construction of the new Bay Bridge. And when the new Bay Bridge was constructed, there was a really unusual and exciting program developed by MTC and overseen by the Oakland Museum, where there was Bay Bridge steel salvage from the structure. And it's a historic structure for use by Bay Area artists. This is what some of that steel looks like today in the salvage yard. It's had lead paint removed and a number of other things done to it. And as soon as you take off that silver paint that we all remember, it rusts and it looks like this. And you may have been noticing that in a number of places in San Francisco, we are seeing the Bay Bridge steel used in public parks and public spaces. And so it's been used for benches, it's been used for some walkways and bridges, it's been used for artwork, etc. And it's come to our attention that there's a real opportunity to consider using it here on the West Oakland Link. And so we've told you before that there are some really important stories to be told, some are ecological, where that shoreline, as Matt was saying, was in a lot of places. So also a lot of really interesting political history, labor history, other history that I think is really important to tell here. And so we're wondering if there's an opportunity to take the Bay Bridge steel and, some of the beacons, some of the site furniture, some of the signage, and it would not have to be every bench or every beacon necessarily, but would some of that be a good idea? So our office has done just a little study of what might this be, and we're really at the beginning of studying it. The starting point are these elements that are available that were salvaged, and they come from different parts of the bridge. And then we started kind of imagining into them, what if that vertical beacon that is a lot of the gateway thresholds to the bike path was made out of Bay Bridge steel? And are there ways to wrap it in that project color and to incorporate that into the signage? And these were just some preliminary ideas. We also looked at what about ideas of making seating or benching, and I sort of like the idea of a bridge and a bridge between people who might have a conversation, or as opposed to a bridge over the water. And what stories would you tell? And then this is a really special piece of the Bay Bridge, which was the top joint knuckle. And we were thinking it's kind of fun for wayfinding, that you could say, hey, this way to Emeryville, this way to San Francisco, this way to Oakland. But what are the opportunities to reuse some of these pieces in ways that serve the project today? And so we're really at the beginning, and the question I'm bringing to you all tonight is, do you want Bay Bridge still on the West Oakland Link or not? Do you think it's a good idea to kind of celebrate the engineering and history of the construction of that bridge and to bring these pieces into this project? And if they were, they might also extend onto the Bay Skyway and other places and be used across other areas. But that's the kind of gut check. And then there's a lot more work to be done on the design itself, and which pieces where and how, but I think you get the general feeling of what this could be like. And with that, I'm going to pass it, I think, back to Nicole. I think you have questions on landscape and site amenities.
Yes, and Sarah, I just want to thank you for tying all that together. I think not only the Bay Bridge steel, but the fuchsia came as a result of community input from all of these meetings, and just having that through line that makes it different than the bare concrete, right? That makes it a little more than just an infrastructure project. And I'm happy that we ended with your presentation. Okay, Ray, your hand was up. Let's go.
Okay, I keep thanking you, Nicole. I'd like to comment on the one thing I would like to focus on. This I'm actually the most concerned about regarding is the the understory landscaping. Your list of criteria that came up at the beginning was, admirable. It had, ecological and native plants and so forth. Maybe I missed it, but I think you said you wanted them to be hardy, but I think that the plants need to be very, anything has to be able to hold its own and basically expand and spread so that it can basically keep weeds out. That's a problem we found on Mandela Parkway. It's the areas where there's lawn and the areas where there's shrubbery that covers the landscape. Those will sort of preempt the weeds, but other areas where there are individual plants, individual rose bushes or so forth, those become basically unmanageable in the normal sort of contract management system. And so I think, that should be an important criteria of understory plants that will basically require no maintenance and probably no water, because keeping irrigation systems up seems to be beyond. Well, I guess that's another question is who will be responsible for the maintenance of these all these landscape areas.
Yeah, and I can speak to who. I think that hopefully, like Matt is taking these comments and, thinking about the planting and that sort of thing. I think this criteria. And one thing that actually Matt had mentioned to me is that we should be looking at what is what is working on Mandela and what is not, right? Because I mean, it's the same area. In terms of the operations and maintenance and for the whole thing, the structural areas and that area underneath that we're showing underneath the freeways there, that's all owned by Caltrans. So that'll all be owned by Caltrans. And then the areas where we were showing the alleyways and those amenities, that's all owned by the city. And so what BATA is kind of committed to doing is working out agreements and paying for the maintenance and operations of those areas. So anything that we're improving, we will pay for those, the maintenance and operations of those areas. And through, we haven't figured out yet, but some sort of agreement. So, and it might not be the same for the whole thing. Maybe the city side's different. And, once you get over to the freeways, it's a different entity who's taking care of that. But we are currently working on a plan for that. But it is, but the commitment from BATA is to pay for that maintenance and make sure that it happens.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'll say this one more thing. The Mandela Parkway, because it was a Caltrans disaster area, after the parkway was established, Caltrans paid for the maintenance for a number of years, but then they stopped. And that's when I think the maintenance started becoming less reliable. So I hope that if you do get BATA or some other agency to take that on, it can be for a long term. Maybe that's asking a lot, but I think that's what's needed.
That is our plan. Yeah. So our plan is long-term maintenance. The path is being added to the bridge inventory. So the assets that are managed under the bridges. It's acting as a pedestrian bridge to reach the other bridge. So.
Let's see. I see Alexis has a question for the Mandela Mega Bulb Out. Will that be bigger than the one that already exists? The current one isn't working well. Often cars, trucks ride over it.
Yeah, and I've actually seen that happen myself. I saw a car didn't understand it and rode right into the bike area right up there. Didn't sound good for the car. I think the city, I think, is also aware of these concerns. And so when we brought this design to the city, one of the kind of improvements that they pushed upon us was that when we go up onto those bulb outs, instead of the current configuration where it's, a pedestrian sidewalk and then it drops down in the bicycle space and then there's a little curb, and that's, I think, where a lot of that confusion is. Those curbs are very low, and it's kind of hard to see. You're in a car, a lot of cars don't have great views there. So what we're going to do is we're just going to push the whole curb out, so there won't be a drop off for the bike lane around Mandela and Grand. It will be all kind of these shared spaces, and so that should prevent a lot of that, because then it will be a very clear delineation of this is the car, road area, and this is the pedestrian and bike area. We've also considered different kind of, making it kind of bright color curbs and other things that we can do. But we are very aware of that, and we're trying to design for it.
Thanks, Gavin. Ms. Owens, you had a question about trees and whether or not they were people protected. I'm not sure I read that correctly.
Yes.
I don't know who's protecting who, but I want to give you a chance to talk about it.
Okay, people protected. I mean, it's so nice, and people start coming around and they like it, and they may want to just take it home. That's what I meant about people protected. Because it has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing we can do to kind of, I think the trees are going to be big, so hopefully we're not worried about the trees.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, the trees.
Okay. I mean, I could see it more with some of the bushes and shrubs and flowers and stuff that get planted there. And there is when you build this out in the landscaping, you do kind of have an establishment period where we will be being there more frequent and making sure that they are going. And so we write that into kind of the contracts that we do. And so in those first 3 years of that establishment period, we will be replacing them, but there is always that. I don't know if there's a way to prevent that. You know, I think it's the eyes. If you get if enough people are using this and it's popular enough, I think that's the kind of best way. So maybe it's getting the rest of the pathways built so it's a complete network and people are using this every day, all day, and it's, you know, it's really vibrant, might be the only way to prevent that kind of plant theft.
Call them out if you see them doing it.
They usually do it when there's less
Mhm.
eyes around.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Brian, I see your hand up.
Yeah, yes, thank you. It's a comment about the bike lanes, curbs, and some of the. This is my earlier question in the chat about the closing of, I think it was, is it Chester Street, the left turn. I think it's important. I don't really have the answer, but I think it's important that we reflect on the fact that years ago when we were trying to do that, when we did the new truck routes, we closed a lot of official truck route streets. One of the things we said was that the area west of Grand and north of Grand and west of Mandela Parkway, that kind of triangle area in there, is almost completely truck yards. And we weren't going to fight with the trucking industry about that. They already had that land. But I think we need to consider in the bike lanes and bulb outs and that we're trying to get trucks off of the majority of Mandela Parkway. The community has also been working for more than a decade, almost 20 years, trying to relocate cast metals so their trucks don't need Mandela Parkway. So really my comment is about, have we thought or can we think about truck circulation in that area, that triangle north of Grand, and how we can do that effectively without having trucks running over bike lanes all the time, right? Because none of these things are hard enough for cars. They're impossible for trucks to navigate. So the trucks are just running over all the new infrastructure. Can we think about that, or have you already thought about it?
I mean, we've definitely done the studies, the truck turning studies, and looked at all of that. That's part of like the initial due diligence that we do. But Brian, we can definitely work with the team and, you know, the engineers to make sure that we're kind of, we've really covered that, and we can you know, meet with you and kind of make sure that we understand that traffic from the north there, and that we are planning for that. I know that it has been considered and has been part of, you know, the deliberations and working through everything, and that, I mean, that's kind of like, that's the first level we even have to get through before we can start looking at the nice stuff. And so, you know, that was kind of the base of where we started with a lot of this stuff, but we, you know, there has been a lot done, so we can make sure that we are looping back and looking at that, and we'll work with Nicole and you to make sure that we do that.
Okay. Probably Bill's a good reference in that as well. You know, he's in that community.
Yep. Yeah, and we've presented to the truckers working group at the port, but, you know, that concern was not as much the neighborhood. That was more, you know, the area within the port. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Miss Owens, you're back. Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. It'll be quick. Is there any thought in placing signage on the walkway going, like showing people what's, you know, like a directory, what's in front of you, what's there, you know? And people, as they're walking, they can kind of look. It's like, oh, I want to go over there, or I want to go to that, you know, to give them something to think about as they're walking, you know, into the path.
Yeah, I'll hand that to Erin because we definitely have been thinking about it. She could probably walk through some more of the details.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think some area maps would be a great addition to the design, you know, probably beginning, middle, end, just to show area destinations and
Right, yeah.
orient users of the facility.
But I think, yeah, also, I mean, some of the diagrams you had shown at the beginning that we're looking at were on pavement markings itself, because I think, that those will be helpful too, to have some sort of, markings on the pavement, people understand. Especially like kind of making sure that there's, where there's enough room, that there's good separation between cyclists and pedestrians.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it would add to the path,
I agree. I think, we'll make, I think we are there. Definitely there's been some planning, and some of the previous diagrams we showed, I think in other meetings did have some more markings and stuff. So, but I think we are definitely looking, we are really big on getting the wayfinding right, because, really, there is a few ways to get up onto this path and stuff. And so there, we want to make sure that people are taking the one that's most comfortable for them. And the only way to do that is good wayfinding.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe we'll continue to take questions, but Nicole, I think we should probably, in case people want to leave, talk about the future meetings quickly, and then we can stay on and answer questions.
Absolutely.
So Sarah, if you don't mind, yes, there you go.
So upcoming events, it's a busy, busy week. March 1st, we have Fans Fest at Raimondi Park, hosted by the Ballers. We will be there the entire event, which is 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Come by and see us. If not, just come by. Raimondi Park is looking great, so come support the Ballers and Prescott. March 2nd, Raimondi Park will have a cleanup at 10:30 a.m. So if you didn't have enough fun on March 1st and want more fun, come out March 2nd and help clean up trash. That will be hosted.
Oh, go ahead, Nicole.
It's park cleanup is trash. Hosted by Friends of Raimondi Park, West Oakland Cleanup, and the Trash Falcons. March 6th is our West Oakland Link in-person event. So the content that you heard here, except in person, and this will be hosted at Prescott Market. So it's an opportunity to come out and see this wonderful space that is being added to the neighborhood. The in-person walking tour will start at 4:30, and the in-person meeting will start from 5 and run until 7:30 p.m. And our final design community meeting is slated for sometime in the summer or fall of 2025.
And I just take a point of reference to add a few things to this. So the cleanup is actually going to be of the area where the project is. And so we're working with these great community groups that, really care about keeping Oakland clean. And so we'll kind of be cleaning it up so we can hopefully imagine when we do this walking tour a few days later that, kind of what it'll make it easier to imagine. But, these are being arranged by these community groups. But we will have coffee and pastries there, and I will be there with boards trying to explain the project and stuff as we're doing this. So that will also be a way to learn about it. And then the last, the in-person event at Prescott Market, just a reminder, we will have childcare and we will have pizza for those who come and ask questions of us or give us feedback. So I hope to see everyone there, and tell your friends, I guess.
We'll stay on for questions. And again, thank you for giving us your evening.
Where's the survey?
I'll drop it in the chat again for you, Ms. Owens.
Okay, thank you.
Gavin, you're saying we have to work for our pizza?
Questions or comments, Brian? Yes.
All right, I'll think of a couple of questions and comments. I get a couple pieces of pizza.
And it's going to be the one of the pizza venues that's operated in that market itself.
Great. Sounds wonderful. Thank you. Very good presentation. I appreciate it.
So
That was
maybe,
very interesting. Just a piece of good news in relation to Alverdia's comment about trees might be missing. Just about a year ago, we planted 40 redbud trees at West Grand and on either side of West Grand, 20 on each side. And I thought some of them would disappear. And as of now, all 40 are still there. But what has disappeared are the wood stakes. Probably about 15 or 20 of the wood stakes have disappeared. So anyway, thing to keep in mind.
Any other questions, clarifications, areas we should go back over? Feedback,
Am I supposed
comments?
to be filling out this survey now?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, okay.
Or
You-
when you, I mean, or when it's
Anytime.
most convenient for you,
Yeah.
Miss Owens.
Yeah, so the survey will remain open, you know, for probably the next month at least, right? So we'll put the video of this event, we'll add the slides, and so we'll have all of that up because, we do want to get as much kind of feedback as possible.
Okay.
If a person wanted to have further interaction with the landscape, would Matt be the person for that? Do you have can you put his contact in the?
Absolutely.
Okay. And is this presentation on somebody's website, or ABAT or somebody?
It'll be on WOAP's website by
Oh.
Friday. So I'll send out a recap email along with the slides, the video, and the survey. So it'll be hosted there. Gavin, does this also live on MTC's website or just WOAP's?
It will live on MTC's website. That's a good reminder. I'll put it up. But it's currently the invite that you got, the reminder, the 2-hour reminder for this meeting has a copy too. So you should be able to click on that and get a copy.
I'll look at that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you. I'm saying bye, everybody.
Thank you, Miss
Thank you,
Owens.
Miss Owens.
I'm out too. Thanks.
Bye, Ray.
Good night.
Okay, thank you guys.